right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of a Jackrabbit Illustrated podcast. As always, we are on the Jackrabbit Illustrated Facebook and Twitter, as well as the FCS Fans Nation YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well, as always, we are brought to you by Kubota Dealers of South Dakota with 10 different locations across the great state of South Dakota. There's always a dealer near you to get into some high-quality orange equipment today. They've got parts, they've got tractors, side-by-sides, anything you may need to take care of your ranch, your farm, or your homestead, or even your regular house. They got lawnmowers and everything else too. Kubota Dealers South Dakota, get yourself into some orange today. As always, we are the B team, but us three schmucks are not the star of the show today. We've got the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Zach McKinnell, also affectionately known as the Blue Bloods. Also a part of the Sports Illustrated. Check him out, FCS Central on Sports Illustrated. Check him out on Twitter. He's got a great podcast with Tim Rosario. He's got a YouTube show with Coach Fred. And he is also on Sam Herder's podcast with him, which has been a treat this year as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zach. It is a pleasure to have you around.
I appreciate you guys having me, man. A big fan of the show. You guys know I'm always in the chat, checking out what you guys are doing. So I just appreciate the invite.
Hey, if you could tell Sports Illustrated to not sue us for our likeness to their name and logo and font.
Hey, to be fair, I want to say every team has like something illustrated. So I think you guys are in the clear, man.
All right, good.
I'll just say it's an affiliate. I'll just say it's an affiliate. Like that's my, they're affiliate with us, man. Just let them slide.
Hell yeah.
I think Brendan, you and I were going to the same place there. If we're going to go down, I hope Bison Illustrated comes down with us.
Yeah, they're all going down with us. We're taking them all down. As always, the B team is brought to you by Culver's of Brookings of Watertown. With those two locations, a better brand of beef makes a Butterburger better because it's delicious, just doesn't have the same ring to it. Head into Culver's for a Butterburger, get yourself some delicious frozen custard, and you always, as I always recommend, get the cheese sauce with the fries. It is the GOAT place to go. Zach, we always ask everybody who's on here, do you have a go-to Culver's order? I don't know if they're that popular down in Alabama.
I do not have a go-to order. They actually do have one in Mobile.
Oh, really?
One of them. Yeah. It's
taking over the world.
Yeah. Taking over slowly but surely. I've had it before. It is actually really good. But I have not been there enough to have a go-to order yet.
And you know, one thing while we're on Culver's that's awesome about Culver's is that they still have real people taking your order every time, and they'll bring the food to you. Like, it's getting ridiculous at other fast food places where they they don't even want you to come inside anymore. They're just like, stay in your car, like, don't talk to us. And so Culver's has that hometown feel. They treat you right.
Yeah, other fast food places are like, eat in your car, you slob. I don't want to be associated with you. We don't want you in the lobby.
Yeah,
get out of here.
Don't even talk to us through the drive-through. Order on your phone.
Yeah. Order on the app. Show up. Yeah. Give us your name. We're gonna hand you a bag. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Don't even look at me. Don't even make eye contact. Look away. Here's your bag. Get out of here.
Man, we should make commercials for Culver's.
We should.
I mean, this kind of is a commercial for Culver's.
Yeah, a little bit.
Technically speaking, this is a commercial for Culver's.
I'm talking
not the one they wanted, but the one they deserve.
I'm wearing the right color. Can you see me running out with a bag, tripping and falling? But
yes.
Brendan coming in last minute and catching the concrete mixer so it doesn't, fall on the ground.
There's the hat. I was surprised you weren't wearing a hat. I've seen you without a hat very many times.
I felt really, really odd, so I had to throw it on. Sorry. I realized I look better with a hat.
Zach does fit right in with us, though. Like, he looks like he belongs on this podcast. I don't know if you saw the edit that I did on our logo, but man, you fit right in. You're good to go.
Yeah, facial hair, hat, jacket, hoodie. Like we're good to go.
We could almost do the AT&T bars with the facial hair. The length. Never mind.
All right. Anyway, let's get into recap quickly the quarterfinals. We don't have to spend too much time on it. The A team recapped them. Zach and Tim recapped them. If people haven't checked out Zach and Tim's podcast. I guess, Zach, tell people where they can find you, what they need to search for.
Yeah, Blue Bloods on all podcast streaming platforms and or YouTube. Find us there, and got links on the website as well. So you can find us anywhere around there.
Hold up, you guys got video?
That's that. It's still the Blue Bloods with Fred too. But yeah, Timothy's more just audio. So just search on podcast
gotcha.
streaming platforms for me and Timothy, YouTube for me and Coach Fred.
Got you. All right, yeah, I can't recommend it enough. They do a great job breaking down everything FCS.
Yeah.
We really appreciate what you do. But like I said, quickly, we'll go through the quarterfinals. Talk about the most boring one was Montana State whooping up on Idaho. I thought Idaho would put up a little more of a fight. It's you got to question whether Eck maybe had some other things on his mind. I mean, you'd like not to think that, but obviously the news that he was, I think he was considering the New Mexico job came out right before, and then the next day it broke that he is taking that job. You can't blame him. I'm sure he's going to make a bunch of money, but sucks for the FCS, sucks for Idaho. And again, I would have liked to see Idaho put up a little better fight.
And he's got
Nobody
his mic
say
off.
anything.
Yes,
Dang
again.
Oh my God, I gotta stop
Sorry.
doing that. I can't. I've never.
We
had
should
this
all
issue
just
until this
nod our
year.
heads in
Yeah, you guys
agreement,
would have
like,
nodded.
yeah.
I'd have just kept going. What an idiot. Anyways, I think Eck had the mentality that he brought with from when some of the teams he coached at SDSU went up to Fargo, and you feel like you have to throw the kitchen sink at it to pull the game out, and you're gonna do everything you can. Similar to what was it, 2019? We ended up finishing that game like, what was it? It was the 1916 game with the Winnicky pass in the end zone, when we really dominated that game, but we went for it on fourth so many times that we were still losing at the end. And I feel like he went in with that attitude with Idaho, and with, the onside kick attempt and going forward on fourth and all these other things. And it snowballed on him so fast. It was a good game. And then in like, if you walked away and got some popcorn, it was not a good game anymore. It was just done.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot give, and that is a word of warning to the Yotes, you cannot give Montana State that momentum, because they're going to, all of a sudden you're going to turn around and you're going to be losing by 30 points.
I wonder,
Zach, do you, I've, on this show, I have tried to temper people's expectations of Tommy Millott. Do you think that
Dude, he's good?
I know he's really good
this year,
but
yeah.
do you think that he has developed so far from what we've seen in the past, or has it been matchups? I mean, is he a product of, them having a crazy good run game? I guess, where are you at on Tommy Millott right now?
Okay. I kind of in the middle, where I think he's taken his game to the next level, right? Because I mean, and I mentioned it on today's show that we released, how many quarterbacks in the FCS could have made that play where he made the corner miss on the outside with the angle, with outside leverage, with that sort of move, and staying back, and keep going down the field? The list is probably Tommy Millott, to be honest with you. And it may be one more, but I also think you have seen his evolution a bit as a passer. He's not asked to do much. I don't think he's ever going to be a pocket quarterback where you're going to see him back there and just air it out like you see a Miles Hastings or Zach Calzada or anyone like that. That's not the type of kid he is. But he does what he's asked really, really well. And I think you saw this weekend, guys. I know Adam Jones had 4 touchdowns, but I really do think they did a good job, I would say, containing the run for the most part until it got out of hand. The running backs weren't just running up and down the field like they have at other games this year, but Tommy Millott has been the X factor in both Idaho matchups. I don't know what they saw on film, but Tommy Millott hasn't run that much this year. But against Idaho, they let him go. Maybe it was the linebackers, maybe it was some sort of matchup they had on the outside, but Tommy Millott made those plays. But I will say this, his passing has improved so much this year, similar to how Cam Miller has really taken his passing to the next level. And I think they've kind of developed with each other. But this weekend's a test, because I think this is probably the best defense he's seen all year long.
I mean, the way I think about him is Is he going to be a pro quarterback and sit back there and dice you up? No. But he is a phenomenal college quarterback. Tim Tebow-esque almost, where
or Johnny Manziel maybe a little bit.
I think more Manziel, just because I
Yeah.
think Tebow's more of like that. You can run QB power with him and he get 4 or 5 yards and run someone over. Tommy Malot's just going to get out of the pocket and outrun the corner to the edge, and good luck once he gets in the open field. I think he's a lot more of an explosive athlete compared to Tebow, but I'm with you. I don't think he's an NFL guy. Like I don't think you're going to see Tommy Malott on the NFL roster, but he's going to be one of those quarterbacks we look back on, and he's one of the best FCS quarterbacks we've seen in a long time. One of the best, has led some really great teams, but he's not going to be a guy who I think you're going to see starting in the NFL.
I mean, I don't think you drop him into Incarnate Word's offense and expect to be super successful, but in what they do, he kills it because that run game is a threat. I mean, you can say it's a product of the run game. It doesn't matter. That run game doesn't go away just because you don't want it to for your argument. That's just
the offensive line too, right? The offensive line is just next level in terms of pass protection. Like, he doesn't get hit in the pocket. The hits that he's been hurt on throughout his career have been him just trying to go make a play, downfield or outside the pocket. The offensive line protecting him is one of the main reasons he's been able to develop and be so good this year, is because I want to say they have one of the lowest pressure rates in the FCS, and they got 3 probably All-Americans on that offensive line, or at least 3 All-Conference, 4 All-Conference guys. That's really kind of, I think I would give them more credit, more so than the rushing attack, for how good Malott is.
I think Rev hits it on the head here with saying he's going to be in the CFL, and I think he can really excel there just like Strevler did. So he's kind of like Strevler with a better line, maybe.
Yeah, or even like the USFL, right? With how that league's kind of developing. I think they got some expansion teams coming down the pipeline.
Speaking of quarterbacks and Idaho and Incarnate Word, did you see that Giovanni McCoy is potentially transferred to Incarnate Word?
Oh, that's a lot. I think it's just a better time for it. And now I got a word that I think that's done deal.
Done deal. Oh, okay.
That's crazy.
I would think he'd be chasing some NIL money, but do you think?
I think he already did.
UIW has some? Well, yeah.
I mean, I think he got. Yeah, I'll say he was at Oregon State this year. I think he probably got his bag and was like, I see what they're doing with quarterbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of NIL, I just got to get your quick take. This has nothing to do with the playoffs, but we were messaging about it. I got to get your take on it. There's a kid, I think he's a wide receiver for Texas Tech, who got like $700K up front. He got like 3 cars for his family. He had like a personal driver, all this stuff. And over the season, he had like 8 receptions for 123 yards and 0 touchdowns. Do you think that we're going to see some like NIL burnout, to the point where, or like, are we going to try to transition to like contract deals, or, where do you think we see it go? Because I don't think it's sustainable.
For some schools, it's not, right? But the schools that are getting results out of paying players are going to continue to pay players at a higher rate because they're going to get more and more donations. So I don't know if you're going to see necessarily a burnout. I do agree that it's not sustainable paying players that don't produce. Because if you go out and you get, you raise, let's just say you raise $2-3 million for 1 year, and you just go and spend all that money, similar to kind of how Texas A&M did that 1 year where they landed that top recruiting class and they lost. It's going to be real hard to convince your donors to continue to donate at that rate without the results. So I think that's the teams that are going to hurt. But until the NCAA lays some sort of ground rules, guys, I mean, where does it end, right?
It's the wild, wild west.
I mean, to be fair, with the tampering and with how, guys, the average D tackle right now at the P4 level is getting like $750K to $1 million. That's what it costs to get a starting defensive tackle right now in college football.
Speaking of which, how about that defensive lineman SDSU landed?
He's pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
Dude was a captain of the team.
That's when you kind of reached a new level, right? Because South Dakota State's getting players that played at their previous universities rather than getting like D1 bounce backs that just set the bench. Like, that's when you can really tell your program's recruiting at a high level.
This year is, kind of bouncing off of that. With the number of people in the portal and then the amount that FBS rosters are going to have to shed, if you were to lose a coach like Idaho, this is the ideal time, in my opinion, because there's going to be so many guys out there to pick from. If you need to rebuild the roster, say they're not able to keep a lot of guys, you hire the right guy who makes the right moves, because as of right now, half of Idaho's roster is in the portal, which I think is something that we need to look at a little bit differently, in my opinion. I think that's what every athlete does automatically when their coach leaves, is they jump in the portal, wait for the new guy to get in, and then decide from there.
Well, that's what I thought you were going to go with. It's such a rough year for teams that have their coach leave, and then kids are like, man, I'm going to leave. And like, you're jumping in this portal with 7,000 other players in the portal.
Right.
That's where
It's
I
like,
thought you were
good
going.
luck, man.
It's tough for those players who are doing that. And I don't think a lot of them are thinking that through. And I think a large part of the problem is, this is not where I expected this podcast to go. I think one of the major problems is with the portal, agents only make money if they get a new contract for a player. Players are getting advice from agents who the only way they make money is if they get them to leave their school. So they're getting a bunch of bad advice. That's my opinion. You've got guys, you've got essentially insurance salesmen going out and giving these guys advice, and they're going to fill them full of smoke, because the ones they do sign, because they're not just representing that one athlete, they're going to represent a bunch of them. And they're going to try the shotgun approach and get as many as they can to leave. And then whatever ones do land, then they're going to make money off of that. But they don't make money off those guys if they stay at home. They just don't. And that is one of the biggest issues, I think.
Also, too, I mean, listen, I'm still young, so I get it to a point, because I remember how I would have been thinking at 2021. I'm only 28, so I get it. How aggravating is it when your teammate hits the portal and Hayes Fawcett from On Three is tweeting out that he has 40 offers, and you get the cool graphics and everybody's talking about you. You're seeing your friends go on OVs and getting graphics made and getting offers and all this. And you're like, why am I going to stay here at XYZ FCS school and everyone's going to forget about me for a few months? Might get all American honors, might get all conference, but I can go in the portal and I'm going to have 50 different people tweeting about me. And all this attention. And let's be honest, a lot of FCS kids don't get recruited well out of high school. They also envy that experience to feel what it's like to be recruited at the P4 level. And so this is their chance to do it. And I think that's a huge part that no one talks about. You see all these kids jump into the portal after one good season, is to feel that love that they didn't get coming out of high school, because a lot of these guys were under recruited or overlooked coming out of high school, or a late bloomer.
Well, even on top of that, when you get recruited and then end up at a school, you're getting exactly what you said, Zach. You get all that love, you get all the flowers and everything. Then you show up, you're one of the boys. Everybody there was all state. Everybody was all this, all that, all whatever. And you're a freshman, and it gives them an opportunity to go back through that again. And that's where I think Stone Labanowitz makes a great point, is he says, yeah, you can go do that and get your couple months of fame, or you can stay and cement a legacy that'll last forever. Mark Gronowski will be talked about until well beyond the day I'm dead. Like, Mark Gronowski will be a legend, and Adam Bach will be legends. Those guys that stuck around like that and will be remembered forever. And Timothy says, and then they dump you after 4 months, is exactly it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff and the culture being able to impress that upon them, and their family being able to tell them, hey, step back. Let's look at what's really the best for us right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we need to head to some sort of like contract structure where, you get rewarded for continuing to stay at a place. Like, you don't have to leave to keep making money. You don't have to go get another NIL offer somewhere. And I've seen some of that where they're giving NIL deals to kids that are already at their school to keep them there. And so that's kind of headed that way, but we gotta make contracts for this thing. Cause I mean, it, and maybe some, performance, aspect to it of like, hey, if you don't perform, you're not getting it. But it's going to get tough though. Cause then it's just going to be, they're going to get pissed when they don't get playing time, and it's just going to be a mess. But I don't know.
Let's be honest. Where it needs to happen is the Power 4 level.
Right.
It's not the FCS level or really the G5 level that this is a problem. At the FCS level, I would argue NIL operates in the way it's intended to, with Mark and those guys doing commercials for Applebee's, and you've got like the Grizz people doing their ads for the country club or whatever, and all that
Pump or whatever.
Town Pump and all those. That's the idea behind NIL. That was the concept, and then you get like a Reggie Bush, and he can sign a shoe deal with Nike or whatever. But it's so perverted, and the numbers are so huge at the P4 level that it's just out of hand, and that's where the change is going to have to come in, because it's not going to matter. Contracts are not at the FCS level. I mean, legally, as of right now, there's rules that you can't tamper, and we all know that isn't worth the paper that it's printed on.
Nope.
So it's a bummer, but it's one of those things that I think it's just going to take time until it gets straightened out. We're all going to look back on this in 10, 15 years and go, geez, that was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, House hasn't even settled out yet, right? So we got a lot of time before we even know where we're at.
And especially even with like you extend that to scholarship limits. Like everyone talks about the FBS, the FCS has the ability to go to 105 next year too.
Yep.
How many conferences are going to allow their schools to go to 105? Because I think a South Dakota State can absolutely afford to get to 105 if they wanted to. But I guarantee you there's some other schools in the Valley that absolutely cannot. Murray State cannot afford 105 scholarships. Right. And there's some conferences where there's not a single school in there that can afford 105 full scholarships. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all trickles down too, because now you're going to have to debate on how you spend your resources.
And then there's conferences that absolutely could afford it, but used to have their conference only allow 35 or zero scholarships. Patriot League. Patriot League schools could afford to if they wanted to.
What about Harvard and the boys at the
I was about to say
Ivy League?
The Ivy League is the scariest ones in this, because they could afford 105 tonight if they wanted.
They could just decide to do it.
Yeah,
they could if they really wanted to. They could afford, like if it was somehow a requirement that the NEC had to also have 105. They could decide to fund the NEC as well as their programs and
just
still
for
have
fun.
more money than us. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, right, that this came down right when they were talking about flirting with the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, are they just going to come over here and be like, you know what, we haven't won a natty since 1903. Let me just go ahead and buy a natty real quick.
Yeah. But sorry for that tangent. Just there's been a lot of portal stuff going on, and we got Zach on, so I figured it'd be a good opportunity to ask him his opinion. Let's go ahead and get into.
Hold on, Ben.
Oh, sorry. You want
I have to mention our segment sponsor of whatever that was is Cubby Sports Bar and Grill of downtown Brookings, the best sports bar in the state. I have, in fact, had it confirmed that there's 30,000 TVs in that place. Home of the GI Italian nachos through the end of December. So get on down there. All proceeds benefiting Alex's lemonade stand. But get down to Cubby Sports Bar and Grill. They got the best burgers, nachos, appetizers, chislic, beer and mixed drinks, anything your heart could desire while you're watching the Jacks play. If you can't get up to the Marker game this weekend in Fargo, head to Cubby's, and it's going to be the place to watch the Jacks. You want to be in Jack Central watching the Jacks game, you're going to want to be there. It's going to be packed. It's going to be loud. It's going to be rowdy. Head down to Cubby Sports Bar and Grill and get yourself some GI Italian nachos. Post the picture, tag Cubby's, tag Jackrabbit Illustrated. Let's max out the pledges that we've got for Alex's lemonade stand based off of those pictures, and let's have a day. And thank you to all of you who have posted pictures and tagged us and tagged Cubby's. There's a lot of you. I am
Still
quite
room
certain,
to be left.
Yep. I'm quite certain that the Italian nachos are extremely popular once again. I know I've thoroughly enjoyed when I got to have them when I went up there. Hopefully I'll get up there again this week and have some more.
Perfect. All right. Moving on to the next game. We'll talk about, let's see, NDSU Mercer first. I didn't get a chance to watch much of this one, but it sounds like it was a little bit boring for a while. But that NDSU just kind of handled business. Any comments on this one from anybody?
I said,
yeah. Go ahead, man.
Oh, I was gonna say we're talking NDSU and Mercer, right? Yeah. Kevin. Oh, Kevin. I know you're in the comments, buddy. Who would I rather have? Cole Payton or Gonzalez? I'd have the guy who won by 31-7. I told you it was gonna happen.
Yeah, Mercer's defense definitely looked legit. They got some interceptions on Cam Miller, which maybe not all that surprising to people that have watched them. I'd like to see us, repeat that this week. That could be a real big factor in our game. Obviously, turnovers are huge, and we'll get to that more.
Yeah.
Brian says here, NDSU looks like trash. They better find it by Saturday at 11. We'll talk about NDSU, SDSU in a second here.
Well, maybe Blue Blood. Zach, you can talk on that because I think a lot of people are looking at that like performance against Mercer's defense and just they're not giving Mercer's defense enough credit for how good they are.
They haven't all year.
They're just going, NDSU sucks. They're not as good. And granted, the holes in the offensive line and everything are an issue, but that is a damn good defense that they're facing.
If you could take their defense and combine it with just like pick any offense in between like number 50 and like number 75 in the country, this team would probably be 11-1 this year and would have had a way better shot to win this weekend. Their offense is just so bad, and they just wore down at the end. Because let's just be honest, like North Dakota State has the size on the O line, right? And they just wore on them and leaned on them, and that's what hurt them. But I'm gonna say this: I don't know how he's probably not going to get any All-American honor outside of our publication. Arius Nash is the best defensive tackle at the FCS level, and it's not even a conversation. And I think number 2 played on the field with him this weekend in Mostert. He is better than Mostert. And his ability to just go make a play from the interior is just unbelievable. Dominated this game. They just, like I said, they just don't have enough talent on the offense, man. Their offense might be one of the worst in the country.
Yeah, they still won a bunch of games.
Yeah, I mean, their defense was like outscoring their offense at like week 6 or 7. They would have been like, I want to say they would only lost one game and tied another one if you take all their offensive touchdowns away.
How would you rate them versus SDSU's defense though? Because SDSU's defense has been pretty salty the last couple of weeks.
Like, are you just talking about like position by position or just?
I'm just saying overall
because obviously I'm taking South Dakota State's defense, especially if you guys are fully healthy now. I will say this: I would take Mercer's defensive line over South Dakota State's defensive line every single day. They just have too many playmakers on their defensive line.
But how's that work when we run the hockey rotation versus, and we play against NDSU and don't get wore down by the end of the game?
Well, also,
that's a factor too, right?
I'll say this. I'll trust Mark and Amar not to leave us on the field for 35 minutes a game.
Okay, that's true. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But I'll say this. Their linebackers are really good, but no chance I'm leaving. I'm not taking Adam Bach and Francel and those guys. And then secondary, any secondary with Tucker Large, I'm going to go ahead and take that secondary, please.
Right on.
So, Mercer's funny because if last year they were like they'd be really good if they had a quarterback, and they keep having this hole, and not like they're not quite that, like that position's just not quite good enough. Like they're catastrophically bad. And
to be fair, this kid was supposed to be the starter. This kid was not supposed to be the starter. He's a true freshman. So I'm giving him a little bit of a break. The real problems are offensive line. Like they lost, I think, 4 starters on that offensive line last year, and they're starting multiple freshmen. And you guys know that. I mean, you guys played North Dakota State with freshmen on the offensive line. I don't know what you expected. Yeah.
Yeah. That's bad news if you're doing that.
All right, let's move on to USD took down UC Davis. Entertaining game. Real surprise. Hastings threw 5 picks, but I think he was pressing a little bit once Land Larison went down. It's really too bad he went down. I would have liked to see if he stays in the game, how that game plays out, because I think it's much different in terms of the result and probably Hastings throwing that many picks. So yeah, really too bad there. But credit to USD, they took care of business at home.
The only concern I have with this game going into next game is if you get as many turnovers as USD did, you should win by like a lot more.
Right.
And I said the same thing about Illinois State after they played SEMO, and then they just got boat raced by Davis. And I have concerns because of that with USD. And you can say, well, they got picked off in the end zone and got picked off in the red zone. Okay, you should have won by more. You got 6 turnovers off the guys. I don't care if we're playing NDSU and we get 6 turnovers on them next weekend. I would be stunned. Now, I'm not saying NDSU is bad or they're going to have 6 turnovers. I'm saying if you have that caliber of program, give you the ball 6 times, you should win by 21.
Yeah.
Let alone and Davis is a very good team, but you get 6 turnovers, man. Like it gives me pause leading up to this huge matchup this weekend. It's concerning to me.
Yep, I agree. Last but not least, we had SDSU taking down Incarnate Word. Pretty dominating performance. Man, that second half drug on though. We got up by
It
I don't know,
was
it was like
rough.
31-0 at half, and I was like, let's just call it good. Like, you guys are cold. We don't want to get any more injuries. Let's just call it. But credit to Incarnate Word. They kept fighting. They weren't gonna give up easily. But I think that the run game, the defense was just too much for Incarnate Word. The passing game continues to improve, looks good. Teams, I think that the 605 Hogs are playing so well that teams are starting to have to really sell out on the run to stop us. And it's starting to really open up some passing opportunities. Especially, you saw Alpers get loose almost as wide open as I've ever seen a tight end that far down the field. And it was because they sold out on the run and the play action. So really good to see Gronowski and the receiving core take off. Zach, I know you're still looking for that second, third option. And I think it's by committee. I mean, I think that's we're seeing Ogroski develop a little bit. He's still really young, true freshman. Is it true freshman or redshirt? I think it's true.
He's true freshman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true freshman. He's developing quite a bit. He's got really sure hands, and he's done a good job of securing the ball downfield. So I'm comfortable with him. And it sounds like Goring is going to be back for the game this weekend against NDSU, which could be huge, having another receiving threat there. Overall, I think that SDSU is in a good spot. I think that you want to be playing your best ball at this time of the year, and I feel like SDSU is doing that.
Yeah, I do agree with Zach on we will need the second option to step up in the pass game big time.
100%.
There's one thing that I remember when we had a big time number one receiver is NDSU historically has been good at eliminating them from the game, thinking back to Jake Winicky and things like that, where a lot of games Jake had against NDSU, he didn't have monster games like he did the rest of the season. They've always been very good at eliminating a single weapon, and we'll need guys like Ogroski and Goring in the tight ends to make them pay, I think, to get Griffin loose. Now, I will say this as well. GFW has seemed to we went through that lull after the Incarnate Word game with the pass game. And I think part of coming out of it is Griffin got used to getting all the attention that he started to get as a receiver. So I think that's huge. I don't think he was, he's young, he's a sophomore, true sophomore. And he's never had that kind of attention as the number one threat, let alone being the vastly number one threat that receives the bulk of targets. So I think that was a big deal. So I think that could play into it as well. I expect Griffin to have a better game just because of that. But yeah, that's going to be something that needs to happen.
But Wildy's so good though. I mean, I do think we need to say that. I mean, And I made the bold claim. I think he's going to be better than both the Yankee twins. I know that's really, really high standard there, but I mean, the kid's ability just to go win one-on-one matchups on the outside is just unbelievable. And his route running is slowly but surely really coming together.
Yep.
And if he can stay in Brookings by his senior year, I'm not going to want to see 18 lined up against me. And there's not many teams that are going to know what to do with them because there's not many teams that know what to do with them right now. And I mean, you guys have a lot of, I would say, young talent in that room. But if you guys go out and just get a proven transfer wide receiver to pair with Woody next year, God, that passing attack is going to be disgusting, regardless of who start. I'm assuming it's Mason. Whoever starts at quarterback is going to be loaded at receiver.
Does Roy
I'm gonna ask
Williams
the
have
other two.
eligibility yet?
Right. Is this year that we're getting the other really highly rated Sioux Falls receiver as well?
Jack Smith's already on or you're talking about the other kid?
Receiver.
Yeah, what the hell's his name?
Yeah, I think we got another one. Jack Smith's in the wings already, and he's a really good from Lincoln.
Matt's gonna be so mad at us.
Oh my God, this is a Matt question.
He's gonna disown us.
We need him.
Like
watching.
you guys.
Don't you read my articles? God, I do read them, but I forget a lot. I have only so many. I got the 4 brain cells, and 3 of them are occupied.
But yes, anyway, we are getting a highly touted wide receiver recruit from
Landon Delaney. That's who it is. There you
Delaney.
go.
There you go.
Jesse.
Landon Delaney. Yeah, and he's regarded like
cousin Jesse for the win.
Yeah, remember that name. But yeah, Wildy, he's just so fast, and I think Brendan hit it on the head where he was starting to get doubled a lot. He was struggling with that. But he's starting to run away from guys on the deep balls, and we're seeing Mark really click on those. I think Jimmy Rogers has mentioned it multiple times how much time they spend after practice together, getting that connection going, because I think individually obviously they're both very good, but they just didn't have that connection yet. But I think they've developed it, and I think they're to the point where it's going to be really tough for teams to stop. So I'm interested to see what we'll do against NDSU with him. But before we get into that matchup, let's quickly preview the Montana State USD game. What's up?
I just wanted to say one thing. Zach wouldn't know because he probably doesn't catch the Jimmy Rogers show. But to his point on Griffin Wildy, Jimmy had stated that he's ahead of where the Yankees were for sure at this point in his career. So we expect big things from him. I don't know if y'all caught that, but that was one of my takeaways listening to that show today. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so USD going up to Montana State. This is a huge game for USD. I think Montana State is going to be business as usual for them. They're used to it at this point. That atmosphere up in Bozeman is amazing. Did you guys see that drone shot from their
that was sick, dude?
Oh yeah. My God, yeah. That's why night games are the coolest, because you can do stuff like that. But yeah, they do it right up there. But yeah, I think this game, Brendan, I think you're right that, you need to, I think USD still doesn't have that. They're not that caliber yet. They don't have the experience that where they are consistently taking over games. I think they have a very good defense. I think they have good running backs. Aiden Bauman's good, but I think they're too inconsistent. And I think that'll show against a Montana State team that will just grind you out. They don't make mistakes. They keep scoring. They shut you down. I honestly don't see a way that USD would have to play a perfect game, and Tommy Malata would have to throw a couple picks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think and Brad Koenig asks, I'm sorry for your loss this weekend, man. Mankato had a hell of a run in the tournament, but just missed out, lost to Valdosta State. But anyways, Who do Jacks fans prefer to win the MSU USD game?
I typed in.
If you
we
ask
hope
us,
USD loses every game unless it
right?
upsets.
A lot of Jacks fans, and I'm coming to the realization after scrolling through the FCS Fans Nation page and all this stuff. There are two types of Jacks fans. There are your SDSU Jacks fans, and then there are your Jacks fans who are more proud to be from South Dakota than they are South Dakota State, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But those are the fans who are like, oh, I hope it's an all SD South Dakota championship game, whereas I hope they crash and burn in Montana State.
And then you have Zach, not this Zach, the other Zach.
Right. But
Hey,
I think
Love
on
you,
this game,
Zach.
right. I think on this game, they're a really good defense. I'm just not sure they're deep enough to handle that grinding offense that Montana State's going to throw at them for 4 quarters. I think that's going to wear them out. And Montana State puts so much pressure on teams because if your defense can't get some stops, you are having to try to keep up with them. And they have too good of a defense for you to try to just go blow for blow. You've got to get a healthy amount of stops. If you look at UC Davis making that a close game, they were able to shut them down for the whole second half. You've got to figure out a way to do that. And on the road, if this was in Vermilion, I might pick the Yotes to win this game. But the fact that it's in Bozeman, this is going to be a really tough one for him to pull off. And I got to go Montana State's going to take it here.
I don't think it's going to be particularly close either, honestly. I mean, I think Montana State wins by 3 scores.
Zach,
That's
do you
just
see
my
any way
opinion.
Montana State or USD wins this one?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a pathway, man. You get to the semifinals now. I don't think anyone's overmatched. I mean, obviously, I would lean Montana State to win, but you look at the biggest thing is South Dakota has to find a way to, one, not just establish the run, but they really have to hope Aiden Bauman is able to create downfield opportunities. That's their whole offense. They're just gonna lean on Tyson Pierre and just hope Bowman can push it down the field to whoever it is. And Galbraith had a great game last week, man, coming back from injury, and so he's kind of that X factor offensively. And they have a lot of young weapons, Quarion Adams and those guys. But the other thing is turnovers. They came into the playoffs, I think, ranked 23rd out of 24 teams in turnover rate. They forced like 9 or 10 turnovers in the past 2 games. If they can win the turnover battle significantly, that's going to go a long way into helping them win. The problem is Montana State never turns the football over. So I don't know how, I guess, efficient that is. Also, too, the thing that aggravates me about their defense, guys, are super talented. But they're too talented not to not to create negative plays and get pressure on the quarterback at the rate that they have been. Marquise Grace should be wrecking game plans week in and week out, and he doesn't. And I don't understand necessarily why. He'll have these like one-off performances. Like his game against you guys showed what he could do if he was just clicking at a high level every single week. He did it early against North Dakota State, but then he wasn't around last game. And I thought that was a game against the UC Davis offensive line that he should be able to eat. I just worry that if Montana State's O-line cancels out their D-line, it's going to be a long day. And also, Scott Trey Humphrey didn't play last week. He should be back this weekend. If they're healthy at running back with Adam Jones and Scott Trey Humphrey and Kuhn and Malott, there's just too many weapons. And I think that's going to overwhelm the defense a bit. They're going to have to win the turnover battle and hope Aiden just has the game of his life down the field, because I think that's their best recipe for success.
Yeah, Aiden's going to have to ball out. And you made a good point with the negative plays. I think it is super important against Montana State to get negative plays and get off the field. I think negative plays on first or second down is how you put yourself in position to get off the field. Because if they're ahead of the sticks, you're done. You're cooked. They're going to eat you for lunch. And the problem is if they get to the line of scrimmage, it feels like every time they're at the line of scrimmage, they're getting 3 yards. And if they get 3 yards, they're fine with that, because they're pretty sure they're going to get 5 or 6 on the next run. So they need to generate some negative plays. And I think with Montana State, which is their game plan, is they want you to put your guys out on an island and just try to stop the run, and that's how Tommy kills you. And he's good enough to kill you in those situations. And boy, it's going to be tough for the Yotes in this game. I absolutely think they're capable of winning. I really do. But Montana State's they're really good this year. And for all the, if you look at like the NDSU and USD games, there's a lot of emotion in those games for the Yotes against those programs. They had a vendetta against NDSU after how last season ended. They wanted more than anything in the world. They wanted to end the losing streak in Brookings. You can't fake that. You can't replicate that. And I think you've seen in some of these games that when they don't have that extra juice, they're not as dominant. They're not, that took them to the next level a little bit, I think. And that could, unless they find it, they need it for this game. You need every ounce that they have for this game. And I don't know if they're going to have it.
Their linebackers are kind of the X factor here too. I really like Gary Bryant, the third, super athletic. He's going to have to find a way to contain him a lot because it goes to your linebackers. So that's why I think South Dakota State's a good matchup for Montana State, is because Francel's so athletic, box a tackling machine. You have two linebackers there that you can kind of trust on that one-on-one matchup. Gary Bryant's that guy here. And also, too, the other kid was at Ewell that they got from NAIA. Like, he's a pretty good linebacker, too. So their linebackers are also going to have the game of their life. But I'm with you. The thing that killed Idaho is they couldn't get them off the field. And you guys know this. It seems like eventually they're going to break an explosive play. Malot's going to take it 60 yards if you can't get them off the field, or Humphrey's going to break one, or they're going to do a play action and there's going to be Rohan Jones running wide open 30 yards down the field. You're going to wonder what happened. So it is so important. The more opportunities you give them, the worse they can hurt you.
It's so crazy. It sounds like you're discussing an old Bison team. Oh, wait.
They're coached by an old Bison coach.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
And I think, and you could say maybe I'm nuts on this, Zach. I think that's part of why it's so important to not let them methodically march down and score on you. Because if you're letting them do that, they're going to hit a big play. Like, it's going to happen. They will hit you for a long touchdown. And if you're also allowing them to methodically drive down the field, you're done, because they're just going to be scoring all the time. And your offense isn't going to be able to keep up. Their defense is too good to allow that.
The question is, I think if you're South Dakota, you have to, I think 31 is the number. You have to get to 31 this weekend to have any shot at winning this game. And the question is, can they score 31 this weekend against Montana State on the road?
Yeah.
How many teams have scored 31 against Montana State this year?
Well, I was wondering how many times Montana State or USD scored 31 on the road.
New Mexico did.
Yeah, one.
New Mexico had 31. Eastern Washington,
and we've seen too, if you
get
a New Mexico game proved too for Montana State that you can get up on them and they're not going to abandon their game plan. Like, they're going to stick with it the whole time. So it's hard to get them to chase points because they are so potent just in what they do normally anyways.
Yeah. And their defense is so much better this year. That to me is kind of the X factor of why, like, to me, I look at this Montana State team. If they don't win it this year, it's a letdown. Like, this is the team you built, and I think for Vegan, like, this is the team that you check all the boxes off: defense, offensive line, quarterback, health. That's the first time they've been relatively healthy going into this moment. Home field advantage. You have it all. Like, this is the year you should take it all home. And so I think there's a lot of pressure on Montana State to finally get it done, because they've been on the cusp for so long that if it's another letdown, you're looking like, man, now we're losing a lot. We're losing some of these great offensive linemen. We're losing some of these defensive starters. What do we do now? What do we need to get to that point?
Yeah, for sure.
The despair that I can imagine that would go through the Montana State fan base if they lost to a Valley team either this round or the next round. But I think even particularly in the championship game, if they lost to one of the Dakota States, the despair that would ripple through them, like, what do we got to do this, would just be, I would love just, I love you, young buddy, but I want you to feel that.
Especially if it's not a close game. Like,
that's what I was thinking. If it's like it was a few years ago,
Right.
God, just how
versus
brutal.
NDSU. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, and also too, on the flip side, how big a win would this be for South Dakota's program? If they go into Bozeman and pull off the win, the confidence that team's going to have going to Frisco in a few weeks, man, I mean, it's going to be unbelievable. Especially when 2 years ago they won what, 3 games?
3 games. Yep.
Well, and I'll tell you this from an SDSU fan's perspective, because we've seen the effect going to the national title game can have on a program in a positive manner. That is one of the reasons we absolutely do not want USD to make it, because
bingo.
We went to the semifinals a lot and lost, and it
the
felt
same.
like there was a large portion. I mean, you could see in the attendance in the regular season. All of a sudden, we made the national title game and things exploded, and then won the national title game, and then it really went nuts. So part of the reason SDSU fans don't want them to win is this could be a program-changing win, in my opinion, where it changes the perception of that program with the fan base and with recruits and everything else, recruits in the state, because we may just be in South Dakota, but in-state recruiting is huge here. I mean, you can go through the Jacks roster. I mean, Gus Miller, Griffin Wilde, and there's more and more and more that are South Dakota kids, that it's a huge deal to win those products around here. And that would, this game is monumental.
They might actually
program.
even fill up that tiny dome if they.
Yeah, on a regular season game, no way.
I don't think we
be-
need to go down to attendance shit.
It would be interesting.
I know.
Oh man,
there's been no rumblings that I've heard, but if Eck can get that kind of money after what he did out there, you got to think Vegan's phone's been ringing. What if that happened and it was the right time for Vegan to jump ship? Boy, that'd really be a gut punch to the Bobcat faithful.
Oh, for sure. The only saving grace is if USD made the championship is if we also do and we just house them.
Right.
Then it would crush their spirits again, and all would be right again. But
right.
And the flip side is like ground zero, like hit the emergency button.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Then it'd be.
Oh, they would be so
a happy
obnoxious
day in Brookings. Oh, it'd be a tough year in South Dakota for us.
Yes,
that'd be a really tough year.
We better get to the big matchup. SDSU going back to NDSU, the big rematch. But first,
Northwestern Mutual.
You got it.
Is our segment sponsor for this. Northwestern Mutual, Sioux Falls. Head down there for all your financial needs. They've got everything from life insurance. You know, if you die, they'll take care of your family and everything else. Make sure you've got all your ducks in a row for that. And your retirement finances, everything else. They've got all those services to take care of you and your financial future. Doesn't cost anything to talk to them. They can put together a plan. If you don't like it, well, great. Then don't deal with it. But it really is a weight off your shoulders to have all that stuff set out, sorted out, and you know that you're going to be set for your financial future, instead of throwing some money at a 401k and hoping to retire and maybe Social Security will be there. Instead, go down, talk to Northwestern Mutual, let Chris Schenkel and the boys talk to you and get that all together and get your life in order with that. And they're, of course, also the sponsor of Alex's Lemonade Stand, the competition we've got going on right now that Mark is still in a, let's just say, commanding lead. He has a minor lead over the rest of the other guys, I guess. He's only leading by $20,000 over Aiden Bowman. So let's bump that number up a little bit more. Let's see if we can get to 27,000. Really make it hurt if somebody wants to make a backdoor cover and beat us again this year. We don't need anybody sneaking in the back door this time. We're going to defend this house. So let's really push that number up and take care of it. So that'd be awesome. So that's my spiel on Alex's Lemonade Stand. Northwestern Mutual, they're phenomenal. Chris Schenkel has been phenomenal in support of Jackrabbit Illustrated and Alex's Lemonade Stand. He's been an absolute rock star, goes to tons of Jack's events. So thank you so much for Northwestern Mutual for being one of our segment sponsors.
Great dude.
All right, let's get into this matchup. Obviously, a rematch of the big game in the regular season, which I think we can all agree that SDSU is not the same team that they were back then. I think the passing offense has obviously developed a lot. Tucker Large did not play in that game. And so I think that there's a potential for it to go differently. And I think that, SDSU can look at that game and say that, they didn't play very well and they almost came back and won, or they could almost say they should have won that game. And so to me, I think that one thing we'll for sure see is a bit more opened up game plan, probably from both sides. I think both sides were trying to be super conservative last game, and I don't think we see as much of that this game. I think we see it opened up a little bit more, which I think plays into SDSU's hand a little bit. If we're going to trust a defense to handle an opened up offense, I think it's going to be SDSU's defense. But Zach, where are you at on this rematch?
If you guys remember, I talked about North Dakota State having the advantage in the first matchup coming into it. I would lean more South Dakota State has the advantage in round 2 based on how these teams have evolved over the past few weeks. And you mentioned a few things. I think health, for one, is something I look at. And I also think, too, defensively, I think South Dakota State was playing elite defense at that time, but they've taken it to the next level. And then on top of that, too, I think Wildy's in a better position to make an impact this game. The first game, they kept him a little bit in check, and I think it bothered the offense. And then also, too, Jordan had the perfect idea with his comment. If I'm South Dakota State, I'm leaning on Voorhees more than I am Amar Johnson in this game. I think the physicality he brings in his rushing style will help, I would say, kind of break down that front seven for North Dakota State, which they have some physical guys up front, but I really don't think they're a big physical front seven. They're more finesse. I think Voorhees can come downhill, break some things up, and then on top of that, too, then use Amar late in the game to maybe generate some more of explosive plays in the run game. And then I just think this is a game that I think Mark just has to show that he's Mark Gronowski. And I thought in the first game, like you guys said, I think the offensive play call was a bit conservative. I think Mark has to come out and outplay Cam Miller because it comes down to, I think, which quarterback plays the best game. And I don't think North Dakota State's going to generate much on the ground. I think you guys are going to take away Shamar Brown and that rushing attack. What was it? Kapinu is the backup now. So I think that it's going to come down to Cam Miller, Mark Gronowski, and which guy is going to make enough plays at the end of the game. And to me, I think South Dakota State's defense is a tougher test for Miller than vice versa. I'll mute again.
No, it popped up by my head and said that your mic is muted. Yeah, but nice work, Ben. You just started out along. Yeah, he's committed to the bit now. All right,
y'all both were muted. That's why
I was muted. Yeah.
One thing about Mark that really stood out the last game and has stood out in the game since is in that game against NDSU, he was escaping the pocket constantly and a lot of times when he didn't have to. Yeah, there it is. Ryan Effling. Mark pressed out of the pocket a lot the first time. Ever since he stayed in the pocket, made reads and made plays. He's been stepping up in the pocket a lot more. One that just sticks in my head is, and it's probably a play nobody remembers. It was a USD game. Stepped up in the pocket on his front foot, just flicks it to an out. And it wasn't a great pass, but it was still a hell of a pass because he was so far out on his front foot and he was able to make it because he stepped up in the pocket. And I think that's a huge difference in this game since he has, noticed that and corrected it. You could see it just in his game in general that he has been slinging it a lot better, a lot more accurately, and a lot more comfortably. And I could not agree more. Send the angry elf at him, Kirby Truck and Voorhees, and just batter those walls down. It will be interesting because NDSU had so much success on that last drive, slinging the ball around, which part of it is, the Jacks were in prevent defense and all that stuff. But how much they decide that, all right, maybe we sling it around first and try to loosen up and open up the run game. I could absolutely see NDSU coming out and trying to hit a home run ball right out of the gate with Cam. And, with Cam being full speed and fully healthy, which linebackers on him? Is it you got Frankel or Francel? You got Francel shadowing him, or do you have Bach shadowing him and trying to run him down? And Bach shadowing him is just tons of fun since they played with each other in high school. But that'll be a huge deal, I think, in my opinion, more than anything, is limiting the amount of times that Cam converts a third down with his legs, because it's so difficult to do when he's healthy.
Yeah, for sure. Your points on Mark, I think he looked back at that game and he saw how many times he escaped the pocket when he didn't need to. And NDSU loves to have, their defensive line loves to have those super wide sets, especially the defensive ends. And they like to force you to stay in the pocket because they're depending on the internal pressure getting to the quarterback. And I think that's going to be a big key to this game is, can SDSU's internal offensive line hold long enough to have Mark to get time to throw, because the defensive ends for NDSU just will not let you get out of the pocket as much as quarterbacks like to sometimes. And I think that's something that we've seen Mark do since that NDSU game, is purposely stay in the pocket more, go through his reads and get the ball downfield. And I think that's been a big reason why we've seen some more success in the passing game too. He's a senior, but he's still developing too. And I think we saw some of that this year, that and that was what he needed to show this year, is that he could do it, without the Yankees. He's had some really good receivers, and now he's doing it with some young receivers and a put together group. And so that'll be a huge key for me, is how the 605 Hogs hold up against that NDSU defensive line. If they give Mark enough time, I think it's going to be a bad day for NDSU. I really do, because I think they're going to have to honor the play action, put a bunch of guys in the box and leave some one-on-ones, and we've seen what happens when you do that. So that's my take on the SDSU offense anyway.
And I think we saw our offensive line really come together and gel more after this. And I think that the things with the coordinators, because if you go back to our podcast after that, the questions were, is Mark going to step up in the pocket? Where are we off? Are our guys running routes clean enough? Do we have two coordinators trying to call these? And the O-line's, Mark's obviously not confident in them, and there's reasons for that. I think all those things have been shored up, and I think that the result is what we've seen on the field. And yeah, he only had 7 passes last week that were completed. The incompletions were kind of somewhat on purpose. We don't have to get into that, but look at what he did with 7 passes, right? I mean, we would add those 7 passes in the NDSU game. That's a completely different game.
Yeah, I do wonder how they're going to approach covering Wildy, though, because they did have success, but I don't know if they can use that exact same game plan, because Wildy's developed since that game. So I'd be very curious to see how they approach that. Do they, just shade over the top of them, try to box them in? Do they double them? It'll be interesting to see how they approach it. Also, too, I would say this: North Dakota State's rushing defense did a good job last time, outside of the one big play by Chase Mason.
Mm-hmm.
But they've struggled the past, listen, Abilene Christian had their way running the football against North Dakota State 2 weeks ago. So I do wonder if South Dakota State finds a way to generate some more explosive plays on the ground, does that put more pressure on North Dakota State's offense? And does it put more pressure on the secondary to have to bring somebody down to the box to stop the run game, opening up opportunities downfield? That's something that I don't think South Dakota State was able to do in the first game. So it'll be an interesting chess match, I think, between, South Dakota State's offense versus the Bison defense.
I think what's really important is that the Jacks control the times that we've beaten the NDSU the last 2 times. Mostert was completely a non-factor in those games. And can the 605 Hogs, who have developed tremendously throughout the season, can they nullify him in this game? Because I think that was a huge problem with Mark being nervous in the pocket. I mean, you get pressure in front of you from the interior. Nothing makes quarterback more uncomfortable than that. And in the run game, if you're having a dude just tear it up on the inside, it is miserable to try to get anything going. So can they control him and try to limit him and hit the impact he has on the game is going to be really, really important. Because that guy is capable of wrecking your whole game plan offensively if you don't have the line taking care of it.
Yeah, for sure. Matthew Kroll here says this will be the first time the Jacks end the Bison season in Fargo in the semis. And yeah, I mean, this is the last dragon that Mark has to slay, is beating NDSU in Fargo in the playoffs. And we've kind of joked that if he does this, then just start building the statue. We'll have it done before Frisco. I mean, I think it should be done anyway because he is the GOAT of SDSU. But yeah, he tied the FCS record. This would be for the FCS record, and then he'd be able to go for. Would he be tying?
That would tie.
It would tie
this
the
game
FBS
would tie
record?
the FBS record, and then
Yeah.
he would be over because he's at 49 right now. That would put him at 50 in time with Kellen Moore, and then it'd be 51 at the national title game, hypothetically.
Right.
Yeah, just
Which is
wild.
pretty
Yeah, and
That's
somebody mentioned
rare.
earlier, with the transfer portal the way it is now, that record may never be beat again, and it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, like Jesse says, 0 losses at home as a starter is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean it's just kind of surreal that he had the career that he did at SDSU, and that we got to enjoy it. But anything else on this matchup?
I got a question for Zach, not necessarily on this matchup. Which of these two games are you looking forward to the most?
And I don't think that's even a question. It's this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely this one.
I didn't know for sure because Montana State USD is super intriguing to me personally because it is a new matchup. You see the marker game so many times and it's been played so many times in the playoffs. I didn't know if there was going to be some fatigue with that or not, and so that's why I was asking that question.
What we get is we get back-to-back national title matchups. Like this is a national championship level matchup.
Yep.
So I think it's easily the game of the week. And I mean, I'm more interested in this game than any other game played this weekend. And I think it's two of the best teams in the country, and also too with how they've evolved. I think it's a completely different matchup than in October. So I don't know if you're a true football fan and have watched the film of both of these teams, I don't see how you could be fatigued or bored with these two teams facing off again.
Well, and I've seen like non-FCS kind of national accounts asking, does SDSU, NDSU take over the main TV and you have SMU, Penn State on the other one? And can we acknowledge how incredible it is that the FCS semifinal is on ABC while the first college playoff game ever is on TNT? Yeah. That's amazing. That warms my cold dead little heart.
I was so worried about what was going to happen to the FCS when I heard about how they were going to structure the college football playoff. Can we just talk about how, I guess, innovative they were to put the FCS in front of as many eyes as possible? Last week, guys, we had a Friday night game on ESPN, an 11 o'clock game on ABC, an 11 o'clock game on ESPN, a 2:30 game on ABC. And this week you get back-to-back ABC games on a Saturday with, I don't think, any NFL competition this weekend either. Just college football playoffs. So, I mean, I don't know how the ratings are going to be because of the college football playoff, but being on ABC, you're getting above 1 million views minimum. You're going to have, like, in the span of 2 weeks, probably 5 to 6 games over 100 or over 1 million viewers for like 6 games in the past 2 weeks, plus the Natty, which is going to be on Monday night, finally away from the NFL. And I think it's going to do way better numbers on ESPN. So I got to give the FCS some credit, man. I was really worried, but they've done a hell of a job promoting the FCS and getting this game in front of as many eyes as possible.
I did just notice that we are going up against Texans Chiefs on NBC, which not great. Lord, it doesn't start until noon, but
in the end, it is what it is. I mean, how many times has this is why you have a football program that you invest in, because how many times has Cal State Fullerton been on ABC, right? Or, Vermont been on ABC. They haven't. This is what you can do. And that's the value, I think, as well, that ESPN as a whole has recognized in the FCS from performances in national title games prior that they recognize, dang, if they're pulling these numbers off, we want them on our main channel because they're going to pull numbers even if it is against a tough matchup like an NFL game or the college football playoffs. And we may not have those games on our network, but we can put this on and it'll still get us some numbers for our advertisers, which is a huge thing, I think, for the FCS to be able to hang their hat on.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you like the style of game that it was in the Dakota Marker? Do you like that defensive style of game? Or do you like to see more offense, Zach?
It's football to me. That was a hell of a game. I think anyone who says that game was boring or not enough happened just needs to watch more football. Like, or maybe football is just not for you, right? I think that was a hell of a game. One of the best games of the year.
Do you think we'll see it different this game? Do you think we'll see more scoring? The total's 46.5. Do you think it'll go over that?
I think both teams get to at least 20 this game.
Interesting.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, the Jacks defense has not held the team under 10 points for the duration of this playoffs. Incarnate Word scored 14. Montana scored 18. I mean, they haven't hit the number in the playoffs. It is what it is. And you're going to be in Fargo. They're going to be letting, I'm getting clipped. They're going to be letting Cam Miller fling the ball around. They're going to open up the offense a little bit. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect them to score 20 points in this game. I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption because they have been scoring points on offense. I mean, to put up 31 on Mercer is no small task. And I think the defense will have their hands full. I mean, I know the standard's 10, but that is, as a fan, to have that as an expectation, I think that is too much. I think it is.
I don't think people who have played football understand how hard it is to hold a good team to 10 points. Like, that's actually insane to hold teams to 10 points. Like, that be the standard is crazy. Like, you're facing the number, 2 team in the country? Like, can we have some? Can we be a little bit reasonable here? Like, if they let up 14, it wasn't a bad game.
I don't know if you ever met Jimmy Rogers. He's not reasonable.
Hey, coaches are different. Yeah, coaches are different. But no, fans to have that expectation is crazy.
Yeah, no, that's the team's standard. They say the defensive standard is 10 points or less. But
if they hold them to that, we win.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, if North Dakota State only scores 10 points. South Dakota State wins and probably by more than 1 touchdown.
Yeah. I do think that the team is going to be coming in on a mission. They got a vendetta for this game. I think, God, who was it? Was it your show, Zach, where you described what the defense did as vindictive in this game against Incarnate Word? Or it might have been, that was Curtis Riggs. That was Curtis Riggs on John Gaskin's show. He described what the defense did to Incarnate Word after they had put up 21 on them as vindictive in that game. And I do feel like this team is going to be coming in with that attitude. I think this is different than the Marker game. I said that I picked at the beginning of the season, I picked NDSU to win because they had all the emotion and desperation on their side to not lose a 6th time in a row to SDSU. And now I think all that emotion and mentality is completely on the other foot. I think SDSU feels like I know they don't feel like they played their best ball. Jimmy said so. And I think watching that game, at least Jacks fans in our blue and yellow glasses don't think they played their best game. And if I look at this game, if you give it to me, yes, Cam Miller's had a better year, but in a game like this where everything's on the line, I've got a lot of faith in Mark and to when it comes down to brass tacks in this game to make it happen.
It's so weird. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Just real quick, I was going to say this is kind of a Mark revenge game too, right? Because everyone's been giving Miller praise, and Miller made the drive that everyone thought Mark might have made in that moment. And I think it's Mark's opportunity to go back in there and be like, listen, I can do that too. Just watch don't forget, I just won the Walter Payton less than 12 months ago. And I do think this is a statement game for Mark, especially with everything on the line. I don't think he's going to be thinking about the record. He's going to be thinking about the national championship in that game. But this is a chance to prove, like, listen, guys, it's not just Cam Miller and Tommy Millott. Because I think he has to hear the talk, right? Like, he's not even going to be up for all the American teams, all this stuff. He's going to be wanting to prove that he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the FCS. And I think that's something no one's going to talk about either.
100%. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, if it comes down to who has the ball on the final possession, I'll take if Mark ends up with the ball on the final possession again. I'll take Mark. But yeah, what I was going to say to your point, Brendan, it's so weird how the roles have just changed completely in terms of NDSU used to dominate us in the marker. And, we lost so many in a row and we'd finally beat them. And we're like, oh, yeah, we got them. We did it. And NDSU sitting there like, yeah, just wait for the playoffs. And I think, we're seeing that with this team now that, yeah, you took the marker back from us, but we'll see you in the playoffs. And I think this team's going to relish that opportunity. I think this team, they've got that revenge mentality. And so, yeah, they're going to be ready for this game. And I'm really, really excited for it.
Just for the fun of it, I went through and looked up Mark Gronowski since he lost to UND against UND, and his stats go as follows: 11 for 19, 193 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then the next game he goes for 197 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 rushing touchdowns. And then the next game he goes for 167 yards, 1 passing touchdown, and 1 rushing touchdown. The scores of those games were 42-21 and 49-35 and 38-37. Now, I'm not saying NDSU is even, or UND is even worthy of being in the same conversation as UND, but what I am saying is the offense has proved a point in every one of those games since the Jacks lost to UND, and that was up until the marker game, Mark's only FCS loss. So I am excited to see how this one goes.
100%. Well, with that, we better respect Zach's time.
Yeah, it's an hour and 17 minutes.
I know.
Yeah, and are you even in Central Time Zone still?
Yeah, I'm still in Central Time.
Yeah, Mobile,
Nice.
I guess.
God.
Yeah, thank you so much for hopping on. Again, if anybody doesn't follow Zach on Twitter, make sure you do that. Follow the Blue Bloods. Him and Tim and Coach Fred do great work, both on YouTube and podcast form on Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Thank you so much, Zach. Anything you got in closing?
No, man, I appreciate it. Anytime you guys want me to hop on the show, man, just let me know. You guys, one of the best in the business, man. I appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
All right. With that, we will see everyone on Thursday night when we have another special guest. Most people
First guest ever on Scared Money Don't Make Money.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's special.
Legendary.
I'm sure some people probably know who it is, but we'll wait to actually reveal it on Thursday. We'll see everybody Thursday night at 8:30, and we'll be making our picks against the spread, and maybe we'll talk about Alex's punishment. We'll see. Zach, you got any ideas for that? Alex's punishment? Well, the model's punishment, which is going to be taken by Alex.
No, I mean, now it would be funny if USD makes the national championship to make him have to rock like South Dakota gear all week.
Oof.
No,
That'd be brutal.
That would be
that would be
nasty.
so mean.
that's off the table.
Gosh.
No.
That's worse than the hot dog costume I had to wear last year. But
Yeah, that's brutal, right? Especially if you had to wear it to the game.
yeah,
Yes.
that's rough. All right. With that, thank you, Zach, for being on. As always, go big, go blue, go
Go Jacks.